There sounds unceasingly a nightmare roaring and flapping, and a faint, distant baying as of some gigantic hound. It is not dream. It is not, I fear, even madness. Far too much has already happened to give me these merciful doubts. St. John is a mangled corpse. I alone know why, and such is my knowledge that I am about to blow out my brains for fear I shall be mangled in the same way. Down unlit and illimitable corridors of eldritch fantasy sweeps the black, shapeless nemesis that drives me to self-annihilation. By what malign fatality were we lured to that terrible Holland churchyard? I think it was the dark room legend. The tales of one buried for 5 centuries, who had himself been a ghoul in his time. I remember how we delved in the ghoul's grave, and how we thrilled at the picture of ourselves, the grave, the pale watching moon, the horrible shadows, the grotesque trees, the titanic bats, the antique church. In the coffin lay an amulet of curious and exotic design, which had apparently been worn around the sleeper's neck. Immediately upon beholding this amulet, we knew that we must possess it. This treasure alone was our logical pelf from the centuried grave. Seizing the green jade object, we hastened from the abhorrent spot. We thought we saw the bats descend in a body to the earth we had so lately rifled, as if seeking for some cursed and unholy nourishment. But the autumn moon shone weak and pale, and we could not be sure. So, too, as we sailed the next day away from Holland to our home, we thought we heard the faint, distant baying of some gigantic hound in the background. But the autumn wind moaned sad and wan, and so we could not be sure. I cannot reveal the details of our shocking expeditions, or catalogue even partly the worst of the trophies adorning the nameless museum we prepared in the great stone house where we jointly dwelt, alone and servantless. St. John recognized the green jade amulet as the thing hinted of in the forbidden Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Azred. Our museum was a secret room, far, far underground, a blasphemous, unthinkable place, where, with the satanic taste of neurotic virtuosi, we had assembled a universe of terror and decay to excite our jaded sensibilities. Less than a week after our return to England, strange things began to happen. We were troubled by what seemed to be frequent fumbling in the night, not only around the doors, but around the windows also, upper as well as lower. Bizarre manifestations were now too frequent to count. Our lonely house was seemingly alive with the presence of some malign being whose nature we could not guess. And every night that demoniac baying, always louder and louder. The horror reached a culmination on November 18. terrible scene in time to hear a whir of wings and see a vague black thing silhouetted against the rising moon. My friend was dying when I spoke to him, and he could not answer coherently. All he could do was whisper, "The amulet! That damned thing!" Then he collapsed, an inert mass of mangled flesh. I buried him the next midnight in one of our neglected gardens. Being now afraid to live alone in the ancient house on the moor, I departed on the following day for London, taking with me the amulet after destroying by fire the impious collection in the museum. But after 3 nights, I heard the baying again, and before a week was over, felt strange eyes upon me whenever it was dark. The next day I carefully wrapped the green jade amulet and sailed for Holland. What mercy I might gain by returning the thing to its silent, sleeping owner I knew not, but I felt that I must try any step conceivably logical. What the hound was, and why it had pursued me, were questions still vague. But I had first heard the baying in that ancient churchyard, and every subsequent event, including St. John's dying whisper, had served to connect the curse with the stealing of the amulet. Accordingly, I sank into the nethermost abysses of despair when, at an inn in Rotterdam, I discovered that thieves had despoiled me of the sole means of salvation. The baying was loud that evening, and in the morning I read of a nameless deed in the vilest quarter of the city. In a squalid thieves' den, an entire family had been torn to shreds by an unknown thing which left no trace. So at last I stood again in the unwholesome churchyard, where a pale winter moon cast hideous shadows, and leafless trees drooped sullenly to meet the withered, frosty grass. Baying was very faint now, and it ceased altogether as I approached the ancient grave I had once violated, and frightened away an abnormally large horde of bats which had been hovering curiously around it. I know not why I went thither unless to pray, or gibber out insane pleas and apologies to the calm white thing that lay within. I reached the rotting oblong box and removed the damp nitrous screen. This is the last rational act I ever performed. Claws and teeth sharpened on centuries of corpses. Now as the baying of that dead, fleshless monstrosity grows louder and louder, and the stealthy whirring and flapping of those accursed web wings closer and closer, I shall seek with my revolver the oblivion which is my only refuge from the unnamed and unnamed.